You are staring at a pair of expensive, flash-rusted garden shears sitting flat on your wooden workbench. Right next to them is a greasy $10 blue and yellow can of name-brand aerosol spray oil. To you, that spray can is a desperate attempt to protect your expensive tools from the relentless humidity in your garage. To the $2.5 billion aerosol lubricant industry, it is a highly calculated, incredibly profitable subscription model built entirely on rapid evaporation. And right next to that greasy can sits a completely plain, unmarked block of hard white material. That completely forgotten $3 solid block will do something that $10 can of aerosol spray desperately hopes you never figure out. Stay with me, because in the next 10 minutes, I am going to show you exactly why aggressively spraying your expensive hand tools with those thin, wet oils is a massive trap that actively attracts dirt and guarantees future rust. I am also going to show you how simply rubbing your metal gear with this cheap solid block creates an invisible, permanent dry armor that moisture physically cannot penetrate. Let's talk about the absolute headache of storing metal gear. You walk into your garage or your backyard shed, grab your favorite pair of heavy pliers, your pruning shears, or a costly socket wrench, and you see that gritty orange rust forming right across the steel joint. You immediately feel frustrated. You think you did something wrong, you blame yourself. You assume your uninsulated garage is just too damp, or you think you simply forgot to spray enough oil on them at the end of last season. You assume you ruined your own gear. Stop blaming yourself. You did not fail. Your maintenance habits are perfectly fine, and seasonal humidity creeping into a cold workspace is completely normal. The fact that your tools are continuously rusting is not a failure on your part. It is the direct result of a deliberate engineered trap. When everyday DIYers and homeowners see a rusty hinge or a stiff pair of garden shears, logic goes completely out the window. The massive aerosol spray industry has spent decades aggressively training you to reach for their iconic blue and yellow cans the second you see a speck of orange. They tell you that coating your metal gear in their proprietary, thin, wet solvents is the ultimate standard of rust prevention. So you spray a heavy coat of oil all over your metal tools, completely trusting the process. You are paying a premium for a product that is actively ensuring you will have to buy another can. The chemical companies know exactly what happens when their thin, fast-evaporating solvents sit on exposed steel, but they want you to keep spraying. They want you trapped in a continuous, expensive cycle of wiping down your gear, watching the oil wear off, and buying more $10 cans just to fight the exact same rust all over again next month. Let's talk about the physical reality of what actually comes out of those pressurized aerosol cans. When you spray commercial lubricant onto a pair of garden shears, it comes out as a thin, wet liquid. People assume that wet layer is a permanent protective shield, but that thin liquid has two massive physical flaws that actively ruin your tools over time. First, those chemical sprays are intentionally designed to evaporate fast. They simply sit loosely on the very top of the cold metal. Within just a few short weeks, that wet layer either completely evaporates right into the humid air, or it simply rubs right off onto your bare hands the second you pick up the tool. Just like that, the steel is completely bare and totally exposed to the damp room. Here is where the trap snaps shut. While that wet oil is sitting on your tool, it acts exactly like a massive dirt magnet. If you use a sprayed tool in your garden or your wood shop, every single piece of floating sawdust, loose topsoil, and garage grit sticks directly to the wet metal. It turns into a thick, gritty paste that completely gunks up the hinges and destroys the smooth action of your expensive gear. Here is the part nobody tells you. You do not need to constantly spray wet, failing liquids to protect your gear. You need to walk completely out of the hardware store and head straight to the baking and canning aisle of your local Walmart or grocery store. Look down at the very bottom shelf right next to the glass mason jars. You are looking for a heavy 1-pound blue and white box of generic paraffin canning wax, specifically Gulf wax. It costs exactly $3. That incredibly cheap block of solid wax is the ultimate ruthless weapon against flash rust. The aerosol industry knows all about this old school trick, but they desperately pretend it does not exist because it permanently ruins their ability to sell you endless cans of spray. To understand exactly why it works so perfectly, we do not need to look at complicated metal science. We just need to look at what happens when it touches the steel. Stay with me, because this changes everything. If you look at a steel tool, it looks perfectly smooth, but it is actually packed with tiny, deep, invisible holes. When you slightly warm up your metal tool and rub this cheap, hard block directly across the surface, it instantly melts straight down into those deep holes. Unlike aerosol sprays that sit loosely on top as a wet liquid, this heavy wax wicks deep inside the metal. As it cools a few seconds later, it completely hardens into an invisible, rock-solid physical armor. It completely chokes out the moisture that causes rust. Because it dries entirely solid, it never attracts a single speck of dirty dust or sawdust. It stays completely dry, leaving your tools perfectly armored and flawlessly clean. Here is exactly how you execute this trick. You need your $3 block of Gulf wax, a clean shop rag, and a standard hair dryer or cheap heat gun. Take your rusty tool, let's say it's a heavy pair of pruning shears, and lay it completely flat on your workbench. Turn your hair dryer on high heat and point it directly at the metal joint for about 30 seconds. Next, take your solid block of white canning wax and rub it aggressively directly across the warm steel. Because the metal is heated, you will instantly see the wax melt on contact, turning into a clear liquid and wicking straight down into the microscopic pores of the metal joint. But right here is where you might be hesitating. The absolute most common question homeowners ask before doing this is, if I am melting a thick block of wax directly into the moving joints of my expensive tools, will it completely gum up the mechanism or make the handles dangerously slippery when I try to use them? The answer is absolutely not. Here's the part nobody tells you. The secret to this trick is what you do immediately after the wax melts. Before the metal cools down, take your clean shop rag and simply wipe off all the excess wax from the surface. Because you wipe it away while it is still warm, the wax only cures and hardens inside the microscopic pores of the steel, completely below the surface. It does not leave a thick, gummy layer on top. Instead, it dries perfectly solid and entirely frictionless. It creates an incredibly smooth dry glide that is completely imperceptible to the bare touch, which is the exact opposite of those wet aerosol sprays that always leave a slippery, greasy mess all over your hands. By rubbing this cheap grocery store block into your metal gear, you are keeping hundreds of dollars firmly in your own pocket over the lifespan of your tools. You completely bypass the endless toxic cycle of spraying wet oil, attracting dirty sawdust, and watching your gear rust all over again. You have created an invisible, permanent armor that completely rejects humidity. The massive aerosol spray industry engineered an endless trap, creating a brilliant, fast evaporating subscription model to sell you the illusion of rust prevention. If this old-school dry trick saved you from buying another $10 can of aerosol spray, hit the like button right now. Weaponize the algorithm. Every single like tells the system to rescue other everyday DIYers and homeowners who are trapped in the endless, expensive cycle of buying aerosol sprays that just attract dirt and ruin their tools. Hit subscribe, because next video we are exposing the massive markup hiding inside your expensive wood stain and sealant. See you in the next one.